So, this guy. What are we gonna do with him? Do you have any thoughts? You don't know, do you? Hey guys, MasakoX here. Can you tell with that little exchange that I'm just a little bit salty about a certain something? Yeah, I think you can guess where this is going. There is a character which is really beloved by the fandom for the fact that he had, arguably, one of the best debuts in the entirety of Dragon Ball Z for a brand new character. That might be a good discussion topic in of itself. Let me know down in the comments if you'd be interested to see that. In terms of debuts, Raditz's one was pretty epic. I mean, at that time, we had no idea of how short his time in the show would be when we witnessed the farmer exchange for the first time. But compared to Trunks, going against Frieza and his father without really being challenged, after seeing Goku having to go all out to do half of that, just recently, that was pretty special. There is no denying that Trunks' plot device then was to signify a brand new era in the show, and it was done spectacularly. Trunks is a truly special character. So why has he been relegated to an undeserving future? In fact, you could say he has no future, and future's in his name! This discussion, therefore, may sound a little more heated than some of my typical discussions, but it is something that I absolutely need to vent to you. I also vent my laments in my What If series on the subject, What If Future Trunks and Mai Stayed in the Past, a video you can check out up top if you're interested. I felt it was something that I needed to do to counter people saying, well, if you don't like it so much, stop whinging about it and do something. So there, I did just that. I feel like it's a decent solution if the showrunners of Super absolutely insisted on having Future Zeno do what he did, and keep the Goku Black perfectly intact. Oh well, can't have it all, I suppose. But in terms of future Trunks and his place in the story, as of late, he hasn't got one. Okay, he does have something in Super Dragon Ball Heroes, but even then, all he is there is to get the main characters to go off and do something, and then afterwards, he doesn't really do anything other than give his father a hand and stare at the action going on. He has truly there become the perfect pupil of Krillin. He is truly one of us now! I've never been so proud. I suppose there is another thing you can consider. I suppose you can say that one additional interesting chestnut be added to his roster. According to the same series, albeit in the game, Trunks has now been given the same red-haired power that Goku and Vegeta have, the third person to do so in the current era. He has now, somehow, gotten the Super Saiyan God power. I mean, that's cool and all, and it does open the door for Gohan and even Goten, and even the present Trunks to get the same power, eventually. Hybrid Saiyans now, therefore, have the potential to get it too. Narratively speaking, it has grounds for relief, but that power hasn't been given to our boy. That was a power given to Zeno Trunks, a Trunks from the double future, and not the same one that is currently shacked up with Mai, taking the idea of a double date way too literally. To understand Trunks' future more, we need to go back to the beginning and hear from the person who is the closest to that character, Takeshi Kusao, the chap who has voiced future Trunks and even present Trunks since 1991, and for nearly 30 years now, been the bastion of the art of time travel in Dragon Ball. Multiverse theory in Dragon Ball Z stops with him. Now going back to what I said about the impact of this character, it was mighty, as Kusao elaborates on from his point of view. At the time when Trunks appeared in the original work as a new character, I said half-jokingly, I want to do him in the anime no matter what! And after that, I was cast to do him. It was like something out of a dream, being able to appear in such a popular work. Plus, I was able to play the character I had wanted to play, so I was truly happy. Right when strong characters were appearing one after another, and excitement was building in the original work, Frieza, strongest in the universe, appeared. Then, as an incredible anticipation was building as to just what would happen next, a cool young man appeared and halved Frieza with a single stroke. His first appearance had an incredible impact, and it left an impression on me. So you can immediately tell that this guy is the right fit for that character. Trunks is a character who is keen to impress the past fighters in the Dragon Team, and he'll be quite bold and brash to try and win their favour, Kusao's the same. He admires the works of the actors, especially Masako Nozawa, the voice of the Son family mostly, and wants to be part of them, to win their respect and live out a dream of his, being able to make an impact on the fandom, and he did. More than just make an impact actually, Trunks blew the door wide open for the future of the show, as well as bringing it back to Earth and actually doing really well in grounding it within the lore of the show, with the involvement of the Red Ribbon lot. Kusao continues, "In a word, I'd say he's green. It's like he's just so young and so inexperienced. The word youth really suits the character. He seems like if he were an ordinary high schooler, he'd be the president of the student council. But on his own terms, I suppose he's the type who'd think, I don't want other people to tell me I'm serious." He did inherit quite a bit of Vegeta's contrarian streak, that Trunks. In that sense, Kusao's quite accurate. Trunks wants to do the right thing, but isn't sure how to do it due to lack of experience. At the same time though, when you look at what he has been through, he is a very troubled teenager. He's plucky, but has a troubled past. As you know, he had to deal with a very disruptive situation growing up, and the future was indeed no fun, and in fact, quite upsetting. There is still that kernel of hope that drives him forward that he can do something about his predicament, and that something was going back into the past and turning the tide in his and his loved ones' favour. The seriousness of his future was tempered with his burning hope and drive, not to mention the fact that he was so cool. So cool, in fact, that he is up there with Bardock in terms of his Dragon Ball Z era appeal. He and the father of Goku got their own specials. That was a pretty big deal. But here is where I think things start to turn sour for Trunks in regards to his place and long-term future in the character roster. He is too serious. And you know what happens with serious characters in Dragon Ball, Tenshinhan being the prime example here. Now hear me out. I know you're probably saying, well, why isn't Tenshinhan out of the story entirely as well? Well, the thing about that is that Tenshinhan is still in his prime, and he is still on Earth in the present day. There's only so much you can do to push him into the background and not have people then go, well, wait a minute, what about Tenshinhan? He's still alive, right? Why isn't he doing anything? With that guy, you've got to pay at least a little bit of lip service to him, at least once or twice, every now and again. With Trunks though, he's in another timeline, and if there is no means to get there, then there is nothing you can do. Or his access to the timeline here is limited and is arduous, so why bother? It requires effort, so yeah, you can forget about Trunks. Both he and the Triclops are the most serious characters in the show, and they don't gel well with the main message of Dragon Ball, which is meant to be a light-hearted comedic romp of a series, which can get serious, it does, but only in chunks. There is always a little bit of relief from a futile moment to help offer some levity and hope to proceedings, a little bit of a gag just to kind of make you go, oh yeah, okay, alright, calm down, calm down. Even though future Trunks is brimming with hope, in terms of his situation, he's just too serious. He offers no comedic or light relief. In a way, he's a total mismatch for the show. But can't he just be a pastiche of the serious character? Well, no, because it would be totally undoing all of the integrity that he has. And also, we already have a character who does that, and that's Tenshinhan again. He fits that bill. He's always done. He was meant to be the serious guy in the show, being made fun of by the likes of Toriyama to make him look overly ridiculous and stern, highly strung. Oh, look at me, I'm serious, grrr. He had a role in the roster to fill, and so that's why he is still there. To some extent, albeit that extent being very, very small these days. With future Trunks, he can't just usurp that role that the three-eyed martial artist already fills, and does quite well actually. But on top of that, we've seen Trunks' story and had his conclusion with the episode Fight for the Future back in the post-Cell arc. With him getting his conclusion and saving the future, his story was essentially complete, and was a great way to push the overly serious character out of the limelight and let them do their thing, let them be happy away from the main story, as well as actually having a huge legacy, one of the biggest in the show actually. Had it just stayed that way, with Trunks having fought for the future and won, everything would be fine. But it didn't stay that way. I was perusing interviews for this discussion and came across a quote which opened my eyes as to why Trunks never stayed long term or never visited and will probably never visit again in its current guise. In an interview that Toriyama did for Daizenshu 5, the interviewer asked the creator of the series about the Buu saga and why the number of gags in it had just skyrocketed. Yes, Dragon Ball and even Z had gags in it, that's obvious, but you know that the Buu arc was ridiculously gag-filled. It was preposterous. It was actually really distracting. But Toriyama responds thusly. It's also a way of hiding my weakness. If it gets too dramatic and there are nothing but serious developments, it feels like my own blood pressure will go up, and I personally don't like it very much. I believe that comics are entirely for entertainment. Well, there's your answer. The answer to everything. Trunks may have looked cool and had a huge fandom, but he was too stressful to write for Toriyama. His days were numbered. Toriyama couldn't cope with the amount of dramatic overtones in his series and his story, so what to do? Get rid of Trunks. Give him the happy ending, which will mean he'll have no reason to come back to the past. He doesn't have to write for him again. Or at least he didn't have the time. And then there's the story. The Android and Cell arcs were very serious in terms of their overall feel in comparison to most Dragon Ball arcs, and in a way, that's sort of why they're admired by most of the fandom. There were gags, sure, but those arcs were also where Toriyama was pushed the most by his editors and had to really think things through, and it paid off big time. Now with that out of the way, and the editors and producers at Shueisha keen to keep Toriyama sweet after lambasting him for years, and keeping him going for another couple of years, just give him what he wants. And what he wants is gags. And lots of them. With no future Trunks poking his nose into the story, the door was open for Goten and Kid Trunks to fully push the comedy shtick further than ever. That entire arc was Toriyama's own special way of unwinding after months of tension. It even extends to the fandom in some ways. In comments that I've seen, a lot of people love the History of Trunks special, but feel it's not very Dragon Ball stylistically speaking. The anime special wasn't written by Toriyama directly. He had an idea for it, but the script was handled by Hiroshi Toda. He wrote the screenplays for 75 episodes of the series. These ones, in fact. So it's quite obvious he had experience, and the tone here is very like the serious moments in Dragon Ball Z. However, with no Toriyama providing the comedy or light moments actively, and only 45 minutes or so to fit in the story, the stage was set for huge drama and not much else. It's memorable and well made, as well as important to preserve for the history of the fandom, but it feels off in terms of the overall package. There's no real way to unwind comedically, or have a moment with Trunks which is quite calm and, real. The only times that come close are when he's training with Gohan by the sea. Those are good, but are fleeting, and the undertone is always underpinned with concentration. This overly serious background is why future Trunks, I think, will never return. Not even as a light-hearted and more relaxed version of himself. It wouldn't be the same guy, and people would complain that that's not their future Trunks. He doesn't act like future Trunks would do. By bringing him back in the Goku Black arc as well, it sort of broke him. The writers didn't know what to do with him towards the end, and it was made worse with the new time slot, I think, that Dragon Ball Super had. Sure, I think kids can take serious moments, it's important for them to know, but most of the time, future Trunks had been really simplified. And then the same problem arose again. This guy doesn't fit Super's goofy atmosphere. Get rid of him again. It was a very hurried and terrible way to end things, which Totally Not Mark encapsulates in greater detail for his Super video reviews, which you should really peruse when you've got a moment. So where does this leave the character of future Trunks then? Well, there is only one way to keep him in the fans' consciousness convincingly. In games. With games, you can simply focus on the character, and in fighting games like Dragon Ball, seriousness doesn't matter so much. So long as Trunks is there, people are happy. He can be as deadpan as he wants to be, so long as his attacks are preserved and people can actually play as him. When it comes to the Xeno-Trunks iteration in Xenoverse and Super Dragon Ball Heroes, Trunks here is a perfect fit. Time travel and teleportation across dimensions are the norm there, and who better to help guide you through all that? You give them the guy who brought time travel into the story. For better or worse. So with that, some kind of Trunks is relevant to the fans still, and can be kept alive and kicking. But our boy future Trunks, the one from Dragon Ball Z, I think he's done sadly. Okay, why? Well, He's well and truly been carted off to the retirement home of Dragon Ball characters. They could have brought him back for the Tournament of Power, but they didn't. That requires thinking of a reason to reintroduce him, and he'd only just been in the story. Overusing the guy could have made things worse. And I think Trunks would have probably still been salty towards future Zenith for erasing his universe. That's too awkward to deal with. It's better and much simpler to just add Frieza instead. The only way I think you can bring him back now into Super, or whatever the series is going to be called, is to have him meet a character from the games, and someone who technically does exist in the series in terms of her job title, and that is Cronoa, the Supreme Kai of Time. If you have her be introduced to Trunks by Whis to help try and pay off his temporal debts, you could have future Trunks evolve into a new version. You could have Time Patrol Trunks, and then have him transform into a more rounded being naturally, and one without the baggage of seriousness which hindered his long-term prospects in Dragon Ball. That is the only way I can think of bringing him back and doing it well. But what do you guys think? Do you think there is another way of bringing back Trunks properly? Should he just now be left to his own devices, do his own thing now that he's been through the ringers? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going, and I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!